Yep, we're back at 0. So, yeah, we're playing Campfire of Oasis again. This time there's no trophies turned because I got all the trophies. So
Yeah,
now I'm
well,
just adding
there's
wood for
normally
nothing.
I would scratch the surface and like
All right,
identify
I'm gonna
some
look
kind of
at the
logical
fire, see
through
if it gets
line
bigger.
behind the initiatives, but at this point, it just kind of it just unironically comes across as like Donald Trump wildly posturing in this belligerent manner, or directly trying to bankrupt the country, directly trying to destroy America. I don't know. Canada's threatening to cut electricity and minerals to the U.S. This is from the Associated Press. Canada threatens to cut off all electricity and
So
critical minerals
5,
to the
6,
U.S.,
7,
including
8,
high-grade
9,
nickel and
10,
uranium if the Canada-U.S. trade war worsens, per the
11,
AP.
12,
Ontario
13.
Premier Doug Ford says,
Hey,
I'll cut them off. You won't get a grain of
the
sand
snow
out of
briefly
Ontario.
stopped.
Adding,
14, 15,
what would they do
16,
without the high-grade
17,
nickel?
18,
Ontario
19.
Premier Doug Ford says everything is on the table, including power to
I'm not going to
1.5
keep
million
reading
American
all the
homes and
numbers.
high-grade nickel and uranium after Trump announced 50% tariffs on Canadian autos, parts, and steel starting next year, and 50% tariffs on $20 billion worth of Canadian goods Saturday. Could you imagine a decade ago? Well, I guess a decade ago Trump came into power, but like, yeah, a decade ago, before Trump came into power, that we would one day talk about, a ongoing tariff war with Canada. I know the premier
I thought it
of
would. I thought the
Ontario,
fire would
Doug
have
Ford, is
started by
just
now.
posturing. But could you ever imagine that a moment
Does the fire not
necessary
work
of this
anymore?
kind of posture would ever come about? I certainly can't. It's unimaginable. I don't think they're going to do it, but I'm just saying, like, the very fact that this conversation is taking place is completely insane.
It took
We're
me
desperately
126
trying to
votes to start a
find
fire.
victory anywhere we possibly can, and in that moment of belligerence, destroying what remains of our standing in the globe. It's ridiculous. Today, VP Vance said Canada and China are the two worst
Yeah, I think
countries on
that's
trading
it. I
policy.
think it
That's an
might not
opinion,
even
his
be
right, but
me
because Vance
clicking.
specifically complained about
It might
Canada's
just be like after a
extraordinary
while the fire
tariffs, which again
starts.
only kick in above a quota, here is some interesting World Trade Organization data
But in this
via
case, it started at like
Europe-Toby.
125 or so. I
96.7%
think
of U.S.
125. I
agricultural
just thought it
exports to
was
Canada are
lower
duty free compared to
last time.
4.5% of U.S. agricultural exports to China. The sheer number of lies from President Trump about Canada growing again today is remarkable. Just some fact checks from the last 18 months. Daniel Dale, the number one fact checker from Trump 1, coming back. Trump falsely said today that Canada's unemployment rate is 10% and rapidly rising. Though it is 6.4% under the Canadian method that adds about a percentage point and has been declining for 3 months. Trump falsely said today that Canada does 95% of its business with the U.S., though 72% of Canadian exports went to the U.S. last year. Trump falsely said today that high Canadian agricultural tariffs have caused the entire U.S. trade deficit with Canada, though that deficit is overwhelmingly caused by U.S. imports of cheap Canadian crude. And though something like 97% of U.S. agricultural exports to Canada are tariff-free. Like, it's upside down. Everything he's saying about Canada is the exact opposite. Everything he says about everything is the exact opposite of the truth. At this point, it sometimes feels like Donald Trump is just simply lying because he's incapable of saying things that are truthful. Trump has falsely claimed Canada generally doesn't take U.S. agricultural exports, though Canada is the world's second biggest buyer of those exports. Trump has falsely said that the Canadian public likes the idea of becoming the 51st state, which the Canadian public overwhelmingly opposes. Trump has falsely said Canada is one of the world's highest tariff countries, though it is actually low in World Trade Organization rankings. Trump has falsely said Canada essentially doesn't have a military, though its military has fought with the U.S. in multiple wars and its force size ranks in upper half of NATO. Trump has falsely said Canada hiked its dairy tariffs during the Biden administration, though they hadn't changed since Trump's first presidency. Trump has
Wow.
falsely said the U.S. trade deficit with Canada is $200 billion, though it is nowhere close. Trump has falsely said Canada prohibits U.S. banks, though it doesn't, and though more than a dozen U.S. banks were operating in Canada at the time he spoke. Trump has
Trump is
falsely
a
said Canada
liar.
is constantly surrounded by Chinese and Russian ships, though that is fiction. Trump has falsely said then outgoing Prime Minister Trudeau was using their trade battle to run again for Prime Minister, though Trudeau obviously wasn't running. He literally dropped out. Everything he's saying is a complete lie. Okay, Trump on Doug Ford. Trump says lots of bluster from Doug Ford, who's the
I think
premier of
maybe I can switch
Ontario.
controllers now. This is driving me crazy. Let's switch to the other controller. There we
On
go.
behalf of Americans, I apologize on behalf of the American government. I'm sorry that this is happening. Hopefully, we will be able to
Now we
overcome
can just
these
like
problems with
not
the
spin
current
around
administration
unless I
and
want to.
change the American trajectory for the better. We're working on it, even though
That's the
there's a
stuff.
tremendous amount of
There
resistance
still looks like a little bit of
left
sway. I
and
think you
right.
saw a little bit just now. I think the fire is subtly getting bigger. I don't know.
Where you have New York Post columnist Lydia Moynihan.
Might
She's
just
the
be my
financial
imagination.
correspondent for the New York Post.
Yeah, there's definitely a slight drift. It's not nearly as bad as on the other controller though.
I would say, yeah, I'm the Supreme Court correspondent for Sports Illustrated. But columnist for New York Post and financial correspondent put together. Take a guess how she's reacting to Zohran Mamdani's mayoralty.
69% approval rating.
Right now at Mayor Mamdani, who is the most famous Democratic socialist, his approval rating is going up, which is unprecedented. I mean, if you look here, 45% in June, now 47%. New York City, 58%, now 69% in New York City. He is trying to show that democratic socialism is actually something that can work. How do you explain that? Look, it's a good question. I think he was a very skilled marketer, which is why he got into the mayoral office in the first place, and he's continuing to do that. He's very good at the photo ops. But if you look at the numbers, those are telling a completely different story. Rents are at a new all-time high. So I think
Can you pause it?
The data and the reality of the policies.
Okay. So this is all they have now is charisma and social media. That's all they have. We made this point yesterday talking about his approval rating, which, by the way, since June and going up like that, the media did this dunk fest on him because his legal team determined that they couldn't feasibly make it stand to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu
All right.
in New York City.
We got over 800 woods.
This was something
Nothing's happening though. I don't think the woods just keep going. I'll try to get the woods up to 1,000 this time.
And there was a rush to say how horrible his leadership is. Turns out voters maybe saw that, including the cost of living stuff, and said, I like someone who might actually try to arrest this man who's actively committing a genocide and believes in humanity and the rule of law. His approval rating went up after that, and you would never know that given the media coverage of it. And all they can do is talk about his charisma. Obama was somebody who is and remains one of the most charismatic politicians of our lifetime. When did his approval rating dip below 50% and stay there for the rest of his presidency? Almost the entire time. Charisma doesn't matter if you're not delivering on your promises.
True.
Yeah, and we should say too, there was in the implementation of the pied-à-terre tax, a couple of people end up on the wrong list.
We're almost to
They
1,000.
were able to fix it. There is a sense amongst the commentariat that people, average New Yorkers, feel like just they're outraged.
I want to go a little further. I want to get at least a 10-minute video.
Bad news for you. They're not.
I don't know.
They either love it or
We'll go to 1,100 probably at least.
Because it doesn't impact virtually anyone in the city. Like the idea you're talking about, like several thousand people get on this list, the pied-à-terre tax. There are millions of people in this city who do have an apartment that's just here for a couple of weekends, or are flying to Florida to make sure that they have 165 tax days in Florida, so they can avoid taxes or whatever it is, 185. There is such a desperation amongst these people to go after Mamdani, and they cannot figure out how. The guy has not only provided material benefits for people, you got now over 25,000, I think, kids right now getting free child care. He is going to expand it. We see
We're going up to 1,100.
buses are getting faster in some areas, and we see the
Ta-da.
program for the grocery stores. And more than that,
Let's go up to 111.
he's going out there, and he is a great communicator. But you look at the notion of what he's communicating. He's communicating.
They put the comma in there. That's impressive.
Citizens of the city.
Let's go up to 1, 2, 3, 4.
How government works, and this is an anathema to them because they don't like government. And so anybody who's building confidence in the institution of government, in the idea of government, is a threat to them. Keep playing this.
Completely different story. Rents are at a new all-time high. So I think eventually the data and the reality of the policies he's implementing are going to catch up with him. I do think, though, that there are New Yorkers who are happy with him, not because he's a member of the Democratic Socialist Party. They're happy with him because he was talking about affordability and addressing their top priorities. They're happy with him because he's following through on campaign promises. You look at filling potholes or fixing drinking fountains. These are things that New Yorkers care about.
Drinking fountain. It's because somebody tagged on Instagram. Functioning government doesn't need somebody to be tagged on Instagram to fix something.
I talked to a lot of young Democrats,
Uh-huh.
young progressives, and they all say the exact same
He's
thing.
crying.
They're dissatisfied with the leadership of the Democratic Party because the grievances.
All right, we went past 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1, 3, 2, 3, 5. I'm fine with it. Let's let's go to 1, 250. 1,250. Oh, I went to 251, but that's okay. I think it's time we stop here. So yeah, that's all, folks. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment. Love you guys. Bye bye. Save recent gameplay, full video.